Okay, welcome back. We are on slide 35. So there's the full disclosure principle. We're continuing with the foundational principles. We're on the very last one. The only principle associated with presentation and disclosure, just read through this. You have to provide sufficient detail of the occurrence, and the standards tell you what to include. And it's got to be condensed to remain understandable. And again, the costs, the benefit has to outweigh the cost. And it's a trade-off. Is it detailed? Is it condensed? On slide 36, this is a continuation. Disclosure can be made in the main body of the financial statements. So if I put AR net, that is disclosure. I can put it as notes to the financial statement. So I might put fair value investments, and I'd have a 2 beside it for note 2. As supplementary information, management discussion and analysis, which we'll talk about on the next slide. Now, that doesn't mean you can do whatever you want and just tell us all about it. You have to do proper accounting practice and then do the right disclosure. IFRS prefers entity-specific information over general information, and don't duplicate. Slide 37 is the management discussion analysis I was talking about. So management provides an explanation of the financial information and the significance of the information. And they can be very long. MD&As can, we call them MD&As. They can be 70 pages and up. They found actually with IFRS, because it's more principles based, they've had to include a lot more disclosure. There's 6 disclosure principles. You can just read through them. Basically, it's the view through management eyes. It gives supplementary information. You've got to give fair information that's material to decision makers. Outline key trends, risks, and uncertainties. Explain management's plan for short and long-term goals, and be understandable, relevant, comparable, verifiable, timely. So those are big goals for statements that could be, not statements, but discussion and analysis that could be 70, 80, 100 pages. So, these never used to be, really have standards behind them. And these disclosure principles actually came out of Ontario. Their Securities Commission came up with something that would apply because as they got bigger, they got more and more complex to understand and follow. So these are relatively new, and you do read an MD&A. So if you go on cedar.com and find a financial statement, that's where all the Canadian public companies have put their financial statements, so it's accessible. You can also, of course, go to their webpage and go to investor information and get their financial statements there. But get a management discussion and analysis, for example, for Canadian Tire, and just read through it. Or flip through it because it's huge. You will see how easy it is to kind of get carried away with this, and you're putting too much information that's not material and that's not relevant. But one of the things they try and do is talk about how their risk is managed. And they will say, we manage risk by making careful watch of the markets and monitoring it. Well, does that tell you anything? Everybody does that. So in the past, MD&A has been very broad and sometimes kind of useless. Now they're trying to get some kinds of, not standards because they're not official standards, but rules for it to try and help preparers give the most effective information to decision makers. Okay, so on page 38, continuing with MD&A, here's the core elements they want. So this also came from Ontario, and again, you're looking for relevant information. Okay, so that's present disclosure. At the end of every chapter, well, not this one, but all the ones that talk about the standards, they go through presentation and disclosure and what's necessary. You do not have to memorize this kind of stuff. Well, obviously you don't. You have open book exams. But this becomes very useful in the C. You're going to have to start knowing where the stuff is, looking it up, and about it in detail. Okay, so page 39 is just the summary, our user orientation, our objectives, qualitative characteristics, all the elements, and then our foundational principles. So keep this handy while you're going through the questions and through the chapter, because it's a nice summary. Okay, we're leaving the conceptual framework, just going to talk about some financial reporting issues as soon as I find my slides. Okay, they're both IFRS and are principles based. So we leave, last year it was very black and white. This year it's not. There's a lot of interpreting the accounting principles and using professional judgment. So you're going to have to start picking between alternatives where it's not clear cut. So it makes accounting definitely more interesting. Now, sometimes companies will legally structure transactions so that they meet reporting objectives like increased net income. Increased net income. That's called financial engineering, okay? And you really shouldn't be doing it. That shouldn't be your point, is to show increased net income or sometimes decreased net income or whatever show. That can lead to fraudulent financial reporting. This isn't always fraudulent, but it can here. When you talk about in Accounting 316, you're going to do leases. You're going to look at things like this. Some companies will write a lease as an operating lease, but it should be a capital lease. So that's where you get into here. But we're not really going to touch this until you hit 316. Okay, moving along. Slide 41, principles-based approach. ASPE and IFRS, we talked about this, principles. You can just read this. And slide 42, you can read through as well. Not because I think it's not important, but because you don't need me to read every word to you. Okay? I hope that makes sense. Now, slide 43. Activity of the International Accounting Standards Board, new conceptual framework. They're looking at materiality and how to apply it, and a framework for disclosures. So again, we're coming up with more and better rules to streamline the accounting process so that it can be understood in multiple countries, multiple jurisdictions. And there's a primary financial statement project that's on. So again, we went through these pretty fast. Some of it, like the elements, were all, and the foundational principles, were review. Some of it we talked about, the qualitative characteristics. The best way to make sure you understand you're reading the stuff you've read is to do the suggested exercises on slide 44. So, like I said, when you're working through these, you read through the notes first and the theory, because that's all on you. Today, it was the entire chapter's theory, so we went through it. But the other chapters we won't. Then you go through the videos. Then you do suggested problems. And then you do Wiley Plus assignment. So this is all on the document that I put under the course information, so you can look at it there and follow it through. So in the next, I think it'll take us 2 videos, we are going to do exercise 2.6, so you can kind of see how this works, and 2.13 to actually go through some problems. So after this, if you're ready to do these videos, then go ahead and read the question through, have it all ready in your textbook, and then we'll go through it.